Hi, my name is Danielle Metcalf-Chennai, and I'm Edmonton's Historian Laureate. I'm a writer and an author, and I believe in the cause of reconciliation. I live here in Edmonton on Treaty 6 territory, and today I'm happy to read from the executive summary of the TRC's report from pages 263 to 264. The history and destructive legacy of residential schools is a sober reminder that taking action does not necessarily lead to positive results. Attempts to assimilate First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people into mainstream Canadian society were a dismal failure. Despite the devastating impacts of colonization, Indigenous peoples have always resisted, though in some places not always successfully, attacks on their cultures, languages, and ways of life. If Canadians are to keep the promise of the apologies made on their behalf, the promise of never again, then we must guard against simply replicating the assimilation policies of the past in new forms today. As TRC honorary witness Wab Kinew said, the truth about reconciliation is this: it is not a second chance at assimilation. It should not be a kindler, gentler evangelism, free from the horrors of the residential school era. Rather, true reconciliation is a second chance at building a mutually respectful relationship. The words of the apologies will ring hollow if Canada's actions fail to produce the necessary social, cultural, political, and economic change that benefits Aboriginal peoples and all Canadians. A just reconciliation requires more than simply talking about the need to heal the deep wounds of history. Words of apology alone are insufficient. Concrete actions on both symbolic and material fronts are required. Reparations for historical injustices must include not only apology, financial redress, legal reform, and policy change, but also the rewriting of national history and public commemoration. In every region of the country, survivors and others have sent a strong message, as received by this Commission. For reconciliation to thrive in the coming years, Canada must move from apology to action. June 11, 2008 was an important day for Aboriginal peoples of Canada and for the country as a whole. It has come to be known as the Day of the Apology, the day when Prime Minister Stephen Harper and the leaders of all other federal political parties formally apologized in the House of Commons for the harms caused by the residential school system. In their presentations to the TRC, many survivors clearly recalled the day of the apology. They recalled where they were, who they were with, and most importantly, how they felt. Many spoke of the intense emotions they had when they heard the Prime Minister acknowledge that it had been wrong for the government to have taken them away from their families for the purpose of killing the Indian in them. They talked of the tears that fell when they heard the words, "We are sorry." Survivors and their families needed to hear those words. They had lived with pain, fear, and anger for most of their lives, resulting from the abrupt separation from their families and their experiences at residential schools, and they wanted desperately to begin their healing. They needed to have validated their sense that what had been done to them was wrong. They wanted to believe that things would begin to change, not the schools, which had long been closed, but the attitude and behaviors that lay behind the existence of the schools. They wanted to believe that the government that had so long controlled their lives and abused its relationship with them now saw the light. They wanted to believe that the future for their children and their grandchildren would be different from their own experiences, that their lives would be better. The apology gave them cause to think that their patience and perseverance through the trauma and negativity of their experiences in and beyond the residential schools had been worth the struggle. It gave them hope. At the TRC's Saskatchewan National event, National Chief of the Assembly of First Nations, Sean Anchut-Atleo, said, "I think, as was heard here, what I'm so grateful for is that there is a growing experience about the work of reconciliation. How do communities reconcile? Well, it begins with each and every one of us. How fortunate I am as a young man to have spent time with my late grandmother. I held her hand. She was 87 years old, still here. During that apology, she said, "Grandson, they're just starting to see us. They're just beginning to see us." That's what she said. And she found that encouraging because it's the first step, actually seeing one another, having the silence broken, and the stories starting to be told. I think that's where it begins, isn't it? Between us as individuals sharing the stories from so many different perspectives so that we can understand. The report of the Royal Commission on Aboriginal Peoples noted that for some time after settler contact, the relationship between Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal peoples had been one of mutual support, cooperation, and respect. Despite incidents of conflict, Aboriginal peoples' acceptance of the arrival of Europeans and their willingness to participate with the newcomers in their economic pursuits, to form alliances with them in their wars, and to enter into treaty with them for a variety of purposes, showed a wish to coexist in a relationship of mutual trust and respect. That aspect of the relationship was confirmed on the non-Aboriginal side by evidence such as the Royal Proclamation of 1763 and the Treaty of Niagara of 1764, as discussed earlier. The trust and respect initially established ultimately were betrayed. Since Confederation in 1867, the approach of successive Canadian federal governments to the Crown's fiduciary obligation to provide education for Aboriginal peoples has been deeply flawed. Equally important, the consequences of this broken trust have serious implications well beyond residential schools. The trust relationship and Canada's particular obligation to uphold the honour of the Crown with regard to Aboriginal peoples goes to the very heart of the relationship itself. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you will watch the rest of the videos. Masi, thank you.